Alright, this is going to be an experiment. So I made a card game that is played by two people over a connection, and at the moment I'm playing it on one computer, so you're going to get a view of like what both people are doing. This is the deck builder that shows up before you start playing the game itself. And so you'll see this player has a deck fully constructed with 15 cards. You can look through the catalog this way, and you can filter by cost. In the future you'll be able to filter by other things. You can like scroll up through previous decks that you've made. I'm going to end up using one of those. There's a lot going on in the game, so I think I'll explain it once it starts. But basically this started out as just like a fan project to make a card game for Celeste. It's kind of based on the card minigame from Bug Fable, or the Legends of Runeterra slightly, in that players take their turns at the same time. It has like the standard deck, hand, on the table, discard pile zones, and you're trying to win 5 rounds before the opponent does. And I think it will also be the case that you have to win by at least 1, or at least 2 points. So like 4 to 5 is not, you have not yet won, but 4 to 6 you have won. But I'm just going to jump into it and you'll see how things play. Okay, so this player, it's called a lower player, player 1. Let me check that that is what is seen here too. Yeah, so the player on the right has starting hand of 3 cards. The rest of the cards are in the deck. You can always check what's in your deck, but it won't show you the order. You can also see what is in the opponent's discard pile and how many cards are in the opponent's deck. You start with 1 mana. Each turn you get 1 more up to 10. And you can do other things that mess with that. But that's kind of extra. Score is how many round wins you have. So this is the first round, and I can't play any of my cards. I have a 3 for 3, a 2 for 2, and a 3 for 3, so they each cost 3. So I'm just going to pass. And then the second player looks, they have an 8 cost, a 2 cost, and a 1 cost, so they can play their 1 cost. And it is a 1 point for 1 mana card that gives an extra point if the final card that you play costs at least 4. So now priority is back to player 1. They still can't do anything, so they pass. And once 2 players have passed in succession, the round is over. You can check what happened in the last round. Player 2 sees I played a card that gave me 1 point. My final points for the round was 1, so I was victorious and I got a round win for that. This is all pretty bare bones just because if I don't know, if I did a bunch of like visual stuff I would end up changing it, and I don't really want to be someone who does visual stuff. Like the point of this project was just, I like card games a bunch. It is helpful for me to have incentives to code, and if I can just like hack on my own card game that does all the things I want a card game to, that's great. So next round, we now have 2 points, or 2 mana. I can see my opponent also has 2 mana. And I could play this, which forces the opponent to discard 2 and tutor an 8 cost card from my deck. I could play this, which will give me an extra mana next turn. That's what Inspire does, and it will tutor a 4 cost from my deck. So I will see that I have these as my 4 costs. And if there was nothing in my deck, it would pull from my discard pile. I'm going to play this. This won't give me any points, but it will give me an advantage the round after. So player 1 could play this 2 for 2 that would exile or oust the 1 and 0 costs in their hand, which would be this Bones. Or I could play this Bones as a 2-point card for 1 mana, but it will muck up my discard pile. So I'm going to play my Fish instead. Oust just means like it's gone. It doesn't shuffle back into the deck. And you'll notice that I can't see what my opponent's played, so there's a lot of like access to information, mind games going on. I pass. Both players have passed. I see that my opponent played 0 points and I played 3 points. The 2 plus ousting a crossbone gave me an extra 1. So something that's a little bit experimental and maybe just in for debug purposes, I can see what my opponent tutored. I can see that they tutored this card, a Pines. And my opponent can see what I ousted. Probably final product, or as this progresses, you won't be able to see that information. But for now, that's how it is. So scores are 1-1. We both won one of the rounds. And now player 2 has 4 mana temporarily this round. So they have 1 extra over their 3. 8, 2, 1, 4. Gentle means that any extra points you win by get turned into a bonus for the next card you play. So if I win by 4 points, it will give me 3 bonus for the card that I play next round. So essentially the point of this deck is to have turns where you're losing, like you have 0 points, and then the next turn you have a lot of carryover either in mana or in bonus points for the first card you play, and then to chain that along. So this is in line with what I want to be doing. This deck, so every turn you draw 2 cards, and you have a cap of 6. So even if I played nothing, I would only draw a single card and 1 card wouldn't get drawn, so that's kind of a waste. I could play my worst card, but it would do something negative for my discard pile, and I want it next turn for this. So either I could play this, which would reset the points, essentially cancelling what my opponent's played. Maybe that's a good idea. Oh, I don't actually have mana for that. Okay, I just have the option of playing this 3 for 3. So it also has Ebb. If you have a card in your hand that has Flow, that card gets cycled, essentially. It gets discarded. But in this case, it's just a 3 for 3. This player is out of mana, player 2. And player 1's out of mana. They also pass. So I check and I see score was 4-3. I don't actually get any carryover points because I only won by 1 point. I can check and see what's in my opponent's discard. So this is ordered by how it happened, and this is ordered by cost, so that I don't know the ordering of my deck, because that would be unfair. The player who has priority when a round starts is based on who's winning. So if you have more round wins than your opponent, you will go first in a round. Some decks play around that. I'm going to start just playing another 4. And it will be the case that I'm going to go over my 6 cards. So that's kind of like a loss on my part. That's something to think about when building a deck. So I have a choice of resetting. If I think this was like a high value card, maybe played a 5, or I could play this 4 for 4, which would oust my bones. And if I had any other 1s in my hand, 1 cost cards or 0 cost cards, it would exile those also. So I play this expecting it's going to be a 5, which will probably beat whatever my opponent's played. Pass, pass. And I do in fact win, so we're tied. Now, I can start off just passing, because I want to play this, which will give me an extra 2 mana next turn, and it will reset the current points. If I do that, I'm telegraphing hard that I'm going to do a reset thing. So the risk is my opponent plays a low-cost card, and then I can't just pass because they'll have more points than me. I'll have to reset. And this only will work if my opponent is playing a single, like 5 mana card, or 4 mana and doesn't have extra. Alternatively, I could play, I guess this is called Roots, into Pine, and that would give me 6 points with Gentle, which is quite good. So the line of playing Lotus had issues, so I'm going to do the other thing. And my opponent already has incentive to play 2 cards because they're going to be drawing over cap anyways. So I play this 1 for 1, and since this will be my last card, this will give me 2 points, this will give me another 4 points. So I'm expecting to have more points than the opponent. Now, I would like to pass and then play reset. That only works if this is a 0-point card, which would be unlikely. I think instead I'm going to assume my opponent played a 5-point, or will play 5 points in total. So as we see, this player won. They didn't get any extra carryover because they only won by 1 point. And if you have gentle and you win by extra points, then you get to keep those points for the next card. Now I can do the thing that I referenced earlier, or I could leave it flexible. Flare means every card before it on the stack, it gets 1 point less. So I want to play this as the first card, but if I wait and play it later, it will be worth a bunch less points. So what am I doing the turn after this? If I get mana, then I can play Oak. So I could get mana this way, and just play to lose this round. And I would tutor my Volcano. I think I just want to play a bunch of points this round. I'll have 7 next round. I can go 2 into Lotus. So 2 mana for this, 5 mana for this. And this is going to get worse if I'm not ahead in round wins. Currently it's 3-2, but it could change. So this is 0 cost. It makes my opponent discard 1. I think I want to do that into my 6 for 6. So Spring is another mechanic. If it's the leftmost card at the end of the turn, it does something and gets itself out of your hand. So in this case, it plays itself as an Inspire 2, and it's no longer in your hand, and this one would play itself, so it ends up in your discard pile, and then it would tutor a 2 cost. But I want to go down to 4 cards in hand at the end of this. And so I have 6 points on 6 mana. If I have 7 points, I'm probably beating anything my opponent does. Seeing that my opponent played 2 cards, if I play Reset here, and they played 0 points and just played things that otherwise benefited them, then I'm in a bad spot. So I'll go down the line of playing points equal to the mana of this round. So this Bone Knife discarded Oak from this person's hand, and then they drew 2 cards. They have 7 mana. Next round they can play this 8, or they could tutor the other 8. And this round they might just want to play a reset to make this round not count. The ending score will be 0-0. They will go over hand cap since they're tutoring, but that's okay. And I guess they don't need the Inspire off of this. They could just go for the discard. It's probably the better option. Okay, so again, player 1 can't see what player 2 has played, except for in a couple of cases like this. Visible means that the opponent can see what you've played. I have to think about what I do here. 4 into 3. Or I could do 5 and 2, or 5 and 1. 3 and 3 and 1 is good if they have a reset. definitely the thing to do. I mean, so usually you wouldn't know that the opponent has reset. But I totally do, and it's hard for me to pretend that I don't. Let's just say I'm smart and I realize this is what I'm supposed to do. So this player could play a 5, but instead they're going to bluff that this was a big card and pass, because they want the opponent to play another card before they reset. So player 1 thinks, well, they probably played something more than the points that I got from this card. I'll play another 3. And then this player plays a 5. This only resets if it's the final card, which it is for me, for player 2. And seeing that my opponent played a card, I played a card, they passed, I had to play another card, it's likely this is reset, and so I'm playing this one mana 2-point card that mucks up the graveyard. So the ending points were 2 for player 1, and they now have these bad bone cards in their graveyard. You'll see that there's 2 of them. Yeah, you can see how the last round resolved. And the score is now 4-3. This player has 2 different choices for an 8 cost they could play. One of them is better into reset. So Volcano is 5 points, but it also counters the next card played. That's what I'm going to go for. And this player has a 9 for 8, which, if it ended the round as the leftmost card in my hand, it would play itself. Without points, it would just tutor a 2. But here I play it thinking, well, I probably beat whatever the opponent has, and it's my best option anyways. In this case, that's actually not true. Playing Bone, which would have gotten countered, and then playing a 5 and a 2 would have won me this round in this game, but there's no reason not for this player to play. Oh, actually, I should have played Bone anyways. Okay, well, I threw this game, but this player plays a 2 just because they can, and it gives them an advantage. It will tutor the Volcano, because the Volcano will be in the discard pile by the time this resolves. So yeah, this is another visual aspect that's not ideal, but I'm not really nitpicking on visual aspects. You'll see that this countered Cobra, and then this played for 0 points, but forced a discard and tutored something. And the score is now 5-3. That means player 2 wins. It's essentially how this game goes, and there's a bunch of different archetypes that support each other, like pools of cards that have different synergies together that I've enjoyed coding. This coding project has like a Socrates web connecting players to a server, and that server connecting to clients. It has a deck builder logic Python code, and then it has a deck builder visual aspects Python code. The client's in-game code is very minimal. Most of it happens on the server side, and then what's served the clients can't get extra information out of. Like when the deck is sent to each client from the server, this deck isn't in the actual order that it actually is. Like, you can't just see the top card. It's sent in a sorted manner, and you don't get sent the opponent's deck, just the number of cards in it. The next place I might take this project is doing like a web app, so this is more accessible, because right now you need to download the client program and run it, and haven't really worked with web apps at all. I haven't really done most of the stuff I've used for this project. Like, working in Python's kind of new for me, but Python's super easy. It's just been fun to mess around with cards. And here's a fun pet project. Yeah, we'll see where I go with this. And it was like originally just a Celeste fan game where all the cards were Celeste things if you played that game. Games that I've liked are Legends of Runeterra, Magic the Gathering, Gwent. I like getting really good at card games. So, trying to make a, like, focused on the type of skill that I like to see in card games type of game. There's some issues with it, just gameplay-wise. Some archetypes counter each other really hard, and sometimes it's just a coin flip. Like, I see that my opponent played a card, do I assume they played a very high points card, and thus I play a reset? Or do I assume they played a low points card, and were, you know, like they played the dagger, which forces the opponent to discard 1 and cost 0. If they did that, I want to pass back to them, but assuming their card is worth any points, that's a terrible idea, and that sort of rock, paper, scissors kind of just degenerates to coin flippy nonsense, kind of like traps and Gwent. So, I don't know, if I worked more on this, I would have to think about how to design a good game, and I'm not actually sure that's what I want out of this project, but we'll see. Yeah, I'll probably make more of these videos as things progress, and there are like a bunch of different decks that would be fun to show off. Thanks for watching.